Mike, I enjoy plaguing theists with abstract objects because they believe that God must be so super sovereign, but yet how can God not find God's self in this snowstorm, this blizzard of abstract objects, which it seems very difficult to remove? Mathematics and logic and propositions and all sorts of things that are sort of sitting out there, value.
Yes.
How does a theist deal with abstract
I'm not
objects?
sure that it's a sovereignty problem, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like us. So here's something over which God has no control.
Correct.
Right?
And that's devastating to some theists.
Well, yeah, I wonder why it is, though. I mean, because it's not devastating to me. I think, should God have control over necessarily existing things?
Well, the answer is yes, that then God is diminished, because God in the definition is the only self-existing necessary thing. And to have other things of that character is to diminish God. In fact, God is one such thing.
Yes.
And if you have all these abstract objects, there's infinite infinities of such. So God
Right.
is overwhelmed with this blizzard, as I say.
Yeah, there are many of them. I'm not sure it's a blizzard for God. I mean, I get the image, right? But it's like, okay, what would you like me to do, is God's going to say. I mean, these things necessarily exist. I have no control over the existence of some things. Let's just take one of these abstract objects. Take a logical truth. Would you like me to make a logical truth false? I can't do that. Yeah, I mean, it's like, this is just I think part of the problem in the argumentation, that people, you feel like the next move you have to make as soon as is to go to the necessary. So why doesn't he, control the necessarily existing things? It's like as though that's a coherent thing to ask. Mm-hmm. I think it's not. I know people have answered this question saying he does do that. Descartes did, for example, and others do too. More contemporary people do as well.
Well, the arguments they give are different. They say these abstract objects do not exist independent of God,
right,
but are somehow expressions of God's mind. They emerge from God's mind. And God's a necessary being, and so these necessary beings emerge from God's necessary being. And somehow God has priority to them.
Yeah, it's hard to think of them as being abstract objects if they're in God's mind.
Yeah,
right? Because they would have, well, take the analog would be with you. You think of the concept of something. When I imagine something, I have an idea in my mind, it's concrete in the sense that it's causally efficacious. It makes me do things. I feel this way, I feel that way. It makes me move this direction, that direction. So the ideas themselves are, since they are causally efficacious in some way, those are concrete. So these are fine. If you want to make these abstract objects into concrete things somehow in God's mind, that's fine with me. Right? But I don't see the necessity of doing it. Let's be content with saying, why not be content with saying, God's sovereign, right? But he can't control necessarily existing things. When I utter those words, I feel like saying immediately, needless to say. How do you control this?
I actually don't agree with that, and it's an emotional feeling as opposed to logic. I mean, if there really is a God in the way that we think there's God, and for God to be surrounded by all these things that God can't control, I mean, is that the way all reality is? Why is that the case? I mean, what is it all grounded on? Is it just our finite minds that somehow are creating these abstract objects when that's not what they really are? I mean,
but look what you're asking for.
It disturbs my concept of what God is if there is a God.
Yeah.
And therefore I may go to the opposite extreme and say, maybe the abstract objects are there, but there is no God.
Well, it's a curious, if it's a psychological. Wittgenstein once said that philosophers need therapy.
I can accept that.
That's the thing. He said, look, these aren't real problems. These guys need to just, let the fly out of the fly bottle and go on with your lives.
I can identify with that quite well.
Yeah, I mean, but it's kind of like, it's kind of like saying, why would it trouble you that God can't make it the case that there isn't a number one? And I'm not diminishing number one. I like the number one, but an abstract object is necessarily existing. He can't do anything about it. It's really curious to me that would bother anyone about that. So you say, what is it grounded in? it's a necessarily existing thing. It's grounded in itself. There's nothing more to say, I think, is the answer.
Others who are troubled say that these are human language issues,
Yes.
and they're non-problems because they're just expressions of human language that we derive, and they don't really exist. And nominalists say, abstract objects don't really exist; they're just language.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I mean, maybe that's true. I'm just trying to address the worry that's given to me on the assumption that there are abstract objects.
Okay.
So those guys say they can't be God. I want to say, well, I think there can be anyway, even if there are these things. And I think there are these abstract.
And that doesn't bother your concept of God, and you believe in God.
Yes.
And that doesn't bother you.
It doesn't. I mean, I'm a little concerned that I don't see that I should be bothered. So I'm trying to get bothered. But I don't have any, it doesn't bother me.
And I'm not sure that God exists, and I am bothered.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, maybe I can help you, Not be bothered.
Maybe we should both go to a
Yeah, there you go. Maybe the rates will be better.